Taiwan is bursting with heaps of fun places to explore. Join me, Amber Hatfield, as I hit up travel hotspots, soak up some culture, and hunt down hidden gems. Let's go! Hello and welcome back to Let's Go. I'm your host, Amber Hatfield, and today on Let's Go, we're going to take a trip from Taiwan to one of the most colourful and diverse countries that I've ever visited, which is Mexico. So recently I went to Mexico for a few weeks and I found that this country has so much to offer. It's got really beautiful beaches, lots of historical sites, a really rich culture and delicious food as well. But I also found that there are lots of similarities between Taiwan and Mexico that I found in different areas. So let's begin our journey exploring Mexico today with a little twist of Taiwan along the way. So I visited Mexico recently and I was lucky enough to be able to visit various different places in the country, from the west coast in Cabo to Mexico City, Oaxaca, and even parts of the Yucatan Peninsula. So Mexico is really a land of contrasts. It's got really vibrant cities, it's also got remote villages, it's got a lot of ancient ruins, history, and natural beauty. The capital, Mexico City, is one of the largest cities in the world, and it's filled with modern skyscrapers and stunning colonial architecture too. It's actually around 2,300 meters above sea level as well, which means you can get a little bit of altitude sickness if you visit there from a low-lying place, which is what happened to me. In the heart of Mexico City, there's the Zocalo, which is a must-see. It's a square surrounded by historical landmarks like the Metropolitan Cathedral and the National Palace. I found that the atmosphere is quite buzzing. Around the sides of the square, there are restaurants, there are rooftop restaurants where you can look out over the square. There are street performers. There's also a raising and lowering of La Bandera, which is the huge Mexican flag, which is flying all day in the center of the Zocalo. So every day the soldiers will hoist the flag and then at sunset they lower it again. There's a ceremony with drummers and marching soldiers, which is interesting to watch. And then, of course, you have Mexico's beaches, the Riviera Maya, Tulum and Cancun. They're all famous for their pristine waters and their sandy shores. And Mexico is also home to some incredible diving spots. There's cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula, which are natural sinkholes filled with clear crystal water that you can swim in or even dive into. They're like underground lakes, and they were formed as a result of the geological history of the area of the Yucatan Peninsula. So over time, thick layers of limestone formed from marine organisms that were there because the region was once submerged by an ancient ocean. And over time, this limestone formed a platform that was exposed when the sea levels receded. They filled with water, and that is what forms these kind of interconnected underground tunnels of water that are now called the cenotes. And the pockets where they open up is what you can dive into and swim in. They're all over the Yucatan Peninsula. The peninsula also is covered in lush jungle, and one of the highlights of my trip was definitely in Yucatan Peninsula and being able to visit the cenotes. The underwater caves are filled with this crystal clear water, and it really felt like a hidden treasure, very peaceful and almost magical, although in some areas there are a lot of tourists. But this also reminded me of something about Taiwan. Taiwan is really known for its incredible beauty, natural beauty as well. Take the Taroko Gorge, for example. It's got marble cliffs that rise very dramatically above the river, and they're really awe-inspiring, especially when you see them for the first time. And then there's places like Alishan with the forests, and you can catch the sunrise over the mountains. What I found really amazing about Mexico and Taiwan is that they both have these very diverse landscapes. When flying throughout Mexico and taking buses, I noticed that the landscapes are so varied. You have got these mountains, you have got these barren, more desert type areas, you've got beaches, you've got lush jungle, and Taiwan also has a lot of different landscapes as well. You have bustling cities and serene, quiet mountains just within a few hours of each other. So while Mexico is so large with such a vast array of different landscapes, even though Taiwan's a small island, it's also got its own array of different landscapes and diversity. And I feel like the diversity of nature in both of the countries makes you really appreciate the beauty and the importance of protecting them. Now, let's talk about something that's very close to the hearts of many Taiwanese and Mexicans also, and that's food. Mexico's cuisine is really world-renowned, and for good reason. From tacos to tamales to mole and enchiladas, it seems like every region also has its own take on traditional Mexican food. And one of my favorite experiences while visiting new places is to try the food. The toppings are fresh cilantro, lime, spicy salsa. They all add to the kick and the excitement of trying new foods in a different country. And what I found really interesting is the way that street food culture in Mexico reminded me of similarities with Taiwan's food scene as well. In Taiwan, we love night markets, and there's such a haven for street food enthusiasts. You can get stinky tofu, bubble tea, beef noodles, and kind of like Mexicans' tacos, Taiwan's night market snacks are all about fresh ingredients prepared right in front of you. I found something that really reminded me of Taiwan's culinary offering is tamales. In Mexico, tamales are a really staple comfort food, and it was my first time trying them, as there's not that much Mexican food available in Taiwan. There are a few Mexican restaurants, but not a massive amount compared to, say, the southern USA. So it was my first time trying tamales, and they are this kind of comfort food. And for me, I found them very similar to Taiwan's zongzi. Both are made by wrapping a savory or sweet filling in a leaf or a husk. And I really loved trying tamales with different kinds of meats or veggies wrapped in them. So they're wrapped in a corn husk. It's very much how Taiwan's zongzi is filled with different things from pork to salted egg and wrapped in bamboo leaves. Even though tamales are made with corn and zongzi are made with rice, they did give me a very similar feeling. I tried my first tamale in a market in Oaxaca City, and you could really taste the richness of the meat and the sauce and the heat from the spices, and it was so beautiful. Oaxaca itself is also known for its unique take on mole, which is a thick sauce which is made from chilies and chocolate and a whole array of different spices. It's got a really bold flavor, which to me tasted almost licoricey, and also reminded me somewhat of the bold flavors in Taiwan. For example, the 5-spice, which is in beef noodle soup, which is also a little bit licoricey or aniseedy in flavor to me. And it really reminded me how food can tell you so much, and food can even take you on a journey and link different thoughts and feelings with different places in your mind. Whenever visiting a new place, you'll also pay attention to the people. And for me, one of the best parts about traveling in Mexico was the people. Now, I don't speak any Spanish, or at least minimal, just kind of thank you, hello, how much is this, can I have the bill please? And I struggled a little bit to get myself across, and I found that the people were so helpful, very warm and very willing to help you, even if they also didn't have English to be able to speak to me. So they would spend their time trying to help you and trying to understand what you needed, even with the limited communication that we had. I found people were very warm and hospitable, and in the markets, the restaurants, even on the streets, people were quite eager to share with you. When I was in one of the markets in Oaxaca, there was a few people sitting opposite me at a table, and they shared some of their food with me and were explaining some of the different foods available in the market that I should try. And I really found that people were very welcoming and wanted to share their culture. And this is something that also resembled how I felt about Taiwan when first visiting. It's the kind of hospitality that you'll also find in Taiwan. I feel that Taiwanese people are also known for their kindness and eagerness to make you feel at home when you visit the country, whether it's offering you a cup of tea or trying to explain to you what food you might want to buy at the night market or inviting you home for a meal with them. They really share a sense of warmth, and I found similarities in that between Taiwan and Mexico that really made me feel at home while I was there. Now let's talk about festivals. Although I wasn't able to experience any of the very famous or large festivals that are very popular in Mexico, I have noticed and researched that there are quite a lot of similarities between Taiwan's love for festivals and celebrations and those in Mexico too. It seems like both cultures truly know how to bring people together through traditions, food, and different displays of joy and getting people together. For example, there is the Day of the Dead in Mexico. This is one of the most famous Mexican festivals and probably a festival that many people around the world have heard of. It's celebrated at the end of October to early November, and families will honor their deceased loved ones by creating beautiful altars with photos, flowers, candles, and offering things like foods and drinks. It's not a somber festival, and it's more of a vibrant celebration of life and people's memory. In Taiwan, there are also festivals to celebrate ancestors. For example, Qingming Festival, also known as Tomb Sweeping Day. While this one is much more subdued and less of a celebration atmosphere in Taiwan, families still gather to clean and decorate the graves of their ancestors and leave offerings like foods and tea and incense. Both festivals reflect this shared value of remembering and respecting one's heritage and your loved ones who have passed on. Another one with more celebratory energy would be Mexico's Carnival, which is a pre-Lent festival filled with lots of different parades and colorful costumes. So it's really more about letting loose before the somber season of Lent begins. And there's something similar in Taiwan that occurs around a similar time, which is Lantern Festival at the end of the Lunar New Year, when there are celebrations with parades, people releasing lanterns into the night sky, and different traditional performances. What I really love about this is to consider how these festivals reflect the culture of the two different countries and how it really shows the importance placed on things like family and community and remembrance. Despite the geographical distance between Taiwan and Mexico, it seems to be a lot of shared ideals in terms of the importance of things like family and community. And whether it's lighting up the night with lanterns in Taiwan or dancing in the streets in Mexico, it's all about creating connections and memories and remembering people who were important to us and celebrating important gods and deities. And although I wasn't able to witness any of the large festivals in Mexico, I was able to see some processions. For example, when visiting Oaxaca, I was lucky enough to see a wedding procession going through the streets, which reminded me of some of the processions you see from temples going through the streets in Taiwan. The wedding procession I was able to witness was a bride and groom, and ahead of the bride and groom, there were these very large papier-mâché models that were maybe 3 times taller than the bride and groom themselves, with people inside them dancing ahead with these long arms. There was music, band music. There was a whole procession of wedding guests trailing behind, different costumes, and a very warm celebratory atmosphere. And that was one of my favorite things I was able to see while on the streets walking around in Oaxaca City. While I briefly touched on festivals before, I want to talk a little bit more about the culture's approach to religion, especially folk religion. So I found that while Taiwan and Mexico are on the opposite sides of the world, there are these folk religious traditions that share some similarities between them as well, especially when it comes to the role of deities and different rituals and their connection to nature. In Taiwan, folk religion is this vibrant mix of Taoism, Buddhism, and different indigenous practices, and it's all about the relationship between the divine and the everyday. There are different gods or deities which are seen as protectors or healers or guides. And some of the most widely worshipped deities include ones like Matsu, the sea goddess who protects sailors and fishermen, or Baosheng Dadi, the god of medicine, or Tu Di Gong, the earth god. And these deities can be called on by people for various aspects of life, from their health to prosperity, protection in times of danger, and different temples across Taiwan are filled with statues of these gods, and the worship rituals often involve offerings like incense, fruit, and even prayers written on slips of paper to seek guidance. And from what I can understand, there are these mirrors between Mexican folk religion and Taiwan's religions too, where these saints and spirits also play a similar kind of role in everyday life. Mexican folk saints such as Santa Muerta, the Holy Death, and San Judas Tadeo, the patron saint of desperate causes, can also be called upon for protection, blessings, and even guidance during difficult times. These saints are more than just symbols, but they're seen as these active agents in the lives of the believers, and people often bring offerings like flowers or food to their altars to seek help with everything from health issues to financial struggles. And just like in Taiwan's temples, Mexico's folk religious spaces will include maybe altars or community shrines or larger church ceremonies, which really fill the space with energy, much like a vibrant temple festival in Taiwan, where devotees will join processions or burn incense or chant prayers. Now, while I'm not an expert on folk religion or even food for that matter, I did find that there are some amazing things to learn by going to Mexico, and I do love to almost compare similarities between cultures and see what you can learn and what's different or what's the same between different places. So it was really a great experience for me to go to Mexico in these past couple of weeks and see how things are similar to Taiwan and what I experience in everyday life here and what might be different or something new to learn. So while I've been able to share some of the things with you today, there are so many more things I would love to share about. But for today's episode, that's all the time that we have. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you in next week's episode of Let's Go. And I hope to see you in next week's episode. Bye for now.